हर दफ़ा शो मैं कहना मैंने गैस लभने बड़े मुश्किल होंगे ने।
अकाल चैनल ਨੂੰ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ ਨਵੀਂ ਵੀਡੀਓਜ਼ ਦੀ ਨੋਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਬੈਲ ਆਈਕਨ ਨੂੰ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰਨਾ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲਣਾ।
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਮੈਂ ਸਪਾਨ ਚਾਲੀ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਦੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਲੇਟ ਸ਼ੋ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਯੂਕੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਕੋਨੇ 'ਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ, ਬਹੁਤ ਨਿੱਘਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਬਹੁਤ ਐਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਸ਼ੋ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਦੇ ਹੋ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਵਿਚ ਇਜ਼ ਵੈਰੀ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਹਰ ਦਫਾ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਸਿੱਖਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਗਲਤੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੱਸੋਗੇ तो मैं आराम नाल कुर्सी ते बैठा रहांगा, लगांगा बहुत ठीक है। प्लीज़ हर तरह का एक क्रिटिसाइज नहीं होंदा, इट्स फॉर मी टू इंप्रूव माई शो। प्लीज़ अपनी हमेशा फीडबैक दिया करो। हर दफ़ा शो मैं कहना मैंने गैस्ट लभने बड़े मुश्किल होंगे ने, बिकॉज मेरे गैस्ट हमेशा इंटलैक्चुअल गैस्ट होंगे ने, प्रोफैशनल गैस्ट होंगे ने, डिफरेंट फील्ड के विचों उन्होंने लैके असीं उहदे बारे कोई सबजैक्ट ते गल करदे बिकॉज दे आर प्रोफैशनल्स इन दैट सबजैक्ट। सो इट्स जे मैं दंदां दी गल करनी है तो मैं डेंटिस्ट नूं लैके आवांगा, उत्थे मैं जो आई दे टेस्ट वाले बंदर लियावां, डजंट मेक एनी सेंस। सो इट हैव बी द राइट पीपल। अज इस तरह मेरे पास गेस्ट है ने। अज का जिहड़ा साडा मुद्दा है ना, जिन्हों असी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन की गल करो, अब्यूज़ मैंटल फिजिकल अब्यूज़ हुंदा जां असी ना ये सारा गल्लां जिहड़ियां हुंदियां ना इन साइलेंट विच असी सफ़र करदे आ एंड असी लगदा वो यूज़ हो जाना कि एक दूजे पास गल नहीं करते फॉर वट एवर रीजन। एंड देयर इज अदर वन सिमिलर डाइवर्सिटी। ਉਹਦਾ कुछ आंसर हैगा ਉਹਦਾ मेरे ਜਿਹੜੇ गैस्ट ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਗੱਲਬਾत करनी है। ये भी बड़ी एक ਵੱਡਾ इशू है। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦੂਜੇ मैं दसिया जो ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ हो रहा मे बी दिस इज़ वन ऑफ द रीजनस बिकॉज ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ फॉलो नहीं करते तो इस करके हो रहा। तो मैंने गैस्ट मेरे एक्सप्लेन करेंगे। चलो ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਅੱਗੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਵਾਂਗੇ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ मैं इंट्रोड्यूस करा मेरे लैफ्ट ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ साड़ी भैन जे वर्डे एंड पहला आ चुके हैं, बड़े जाने पछाने दोनों हस्तियाँ हमेशा आते हैं, हमेशा मेरी मदद करते हैं। कवलजीत सिंह मिस्टर भामरा भाजी वाज का खालसा वाज की फतेह। पहले तो थैंक यू, तुसी तकलीफ बड़ी मैं हमेशा कहना बड़ी दूरों दूरों आते हैं, कोई कितने रहा कोई कितने रहा। लंडन इज़ अ बिग प्लेस। थैंक यू फॉर कमिंग जी। थैंक यू भाजी, थैंक यू रियली अप्रीशिएट करते हैं तुसी टाइम करते हो एंड उम्मीद रखदा जो भी तुसी अपना नॉलेज ले आए हो शेयर करेंगे, लोग बेनिफिट करेंगे।
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for inviting us to, talk again on this platform. Last time Baram was IRC, there was so much to talk about.
You enjoyed that, no?
Yeah, the time goes very quickly, so thank you.
This is it. कई दफ़ा लिस्ट बड़ी बड़ी होंदी है सवाल जवाब, मैं तो पंजां नूं हर तरह के सवालों का फायदा उठाना। सो अगर बिग मैं क्वेश्चन पूछता हूँ ना, पर कई दफ़ा बहुत रह जाते हैं। पर जो मेन गल होगी अस करेंगे, जरूर करेंगे। अगर किसी ने कोई ना पंजे कोई गल करनी है तुसीं बाय ऑल मीन्स कॉल करके मेरे गेस्ट नाल गल कर सकते हो। तो कई दफ़ा गल्लां च ना जुड़ जाने तो कॉल का टाइम नहीं लगता। मैं गल की से डाइवर्सिटी या वट डज इट मीन उन्हें एक्सप्लेन करो मैंने, बिकॉज इंग्लिश बड़े लोगों को मैनू पता की है, जे मैं उन्हें कोशिश करा पंजाबी दे समझाने दी अभी तक मैनू नहीं समझ आएगी।
From my perspective, is everybody's differences and uniqueness and perspectives coming in as one voice or one way of including them in say for example in a workforce we would look to have difference of uniqueness, different talents, people with different ideas, different perspectives. जे तुसी हुन एक काम करना है, maybe you're building a house and you want to have the perspectives of a number of different people and different talents,
different
group
backgrounds, not from the same group,
not from the same group.
So
फिर ताइयों ते ਉਹਦੇ ਚ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਨਾ।
ਤੁਸੀਂ
ਉੱਠਣਾ ਬੈਠਣਾ ਸਿੱਖਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਲਚਰ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੇ ਸਿੱਖਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਾ
ਜੀ। And to your point, that's really important, Baji, from people from different cultural backgrounds. And the example you gave of building the house, I mean in the workspace, for example, if you want to do a project, if you've got everyone who's going to be like yourself, Baji, everyone like me, you're not going to have diversity of thought because everyone's going to be thinking the same. Yeah, I want to do the project like this. If us three were working together, Benji said, Gengi, Baji, you know what, let's do it this way. Baji, Tusi, Gengi, let's do it this way. I will give my perspective. Ultimately, it will take a little bit longer to get the end result, but you'll have a much better result. So that's why.
But ਇਹਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਮੇਰਾ ਬ੍ਰੇਨ ਖੁੱਲ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। This is the fact, honestly ਕਹਿੰਦਾ। ਇਹਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ because you don't become a lonely person. You don't just sit there ਆਪਣੇ illusion ਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ। ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਨਾ you start to accept other people's
Gee, that's right.
opinions and
Yes.
respect it.
Respect them, and that's the key word you've just used there.
ਕੀ ਪਤਾ ਕੀ
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਉਦੋਂ ਹੀ ਨਿਕਲਿਆ
No.
Respect is fundamental.
Yeah.
Anji.
So
Yes.
you may not agree
हाँ.
with the other person's sochni, but you should respect what
Ke
they
unna di
think,
soch
है ना?
hai.
And that's the whole point of having a diverse workforce. Baji Jodo, last time I see, we touched a little bit on this, and we talked about the McKinsey report. There are so many reports out there that say if you have diversity of thought, you know, it's so powerful that I don't think we should dismiss that in any shape or form. We should encourage it wherever
Absolutely,
we can,
and
be it in your home life or your work life.
Absolutely,
Wherever.
and as an educator, as a teacher, that's a fundamental thing that we would want to encourage is the diversity.
You know, बहुत ही
perspectives.
please, मैं हमेशा कहता हूँ ना, बहुत जो सब्जेक्ट होता है कई दफ़ा समझना मुश्किल होता है, कई दफ़ा समझाना मुश्किल हो जाता है। कोशिश करा करो, बहुत अच्छा इफेक्टिव इन्फॉर्मेशन ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੜਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਕਿ ਮੇਰਾ ਬੱਚਾ ਬੜਾ ਕੁਆਇਟ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ।
Hanji.
Hanji.
That's not right.
No, but
ਉਹ ਕੋਈ ਕਮੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ।
Sorry,
Ji.
Hanji. Or that we would class under inclusion. So we would want to include and diversity. A lot of that relies on inclusive communities or
Ji.
inclusive workplaces and organisations, schools, etc. One of the words we use in the education field of education is differentiation. Are we differentiating for every child? If every child matters, can we give them all an opportunity? Sare equal hai gaya. We see them all from this point of equality, and again that's something that comes in and feeds into diversity. Are we having equality? Are we providing equal opportunities for all of the children? Are we giving them the experiences that are going to give them the diversity, experiential kind of experiences and reference to things that they're not used to perhaps in that community. So therefore in the curriculum we do incorporate different things to enable them to experience.
You know, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕਰੋ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਘਰੋਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ because it goes a long way. ਬਾਅਦ ਥੋੜੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਥੋੜੇ ਕੰਮ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਛੋਟੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਨਾ, ਇੱਕ ਬੱਚਾ ਬੜਾ ਕੁਆਇਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। Yeah. And people are very happy. मेरा बच्चा तमन तंग नहीं करता, कुछ नहीं बोलता, कुछ नहीं कहता। एक बच्चा full of questions.
yes,
Hanji.
that's right.
And parents get fed up with that.
but
This is a fact.
yes,
ਤੁਸੀਂ
yeah.
ਉਹਨੂੰ ਬੱਚੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਸੁਣੋ, he is trying to give you a message.
Yes.
Because ਉਹਦੀ IQ ਹਾਈ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਟ ਹੈਗਾ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਨਾਲੋਂ। ਬੇਸ਼ੱਕ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਂ ਪਿਓ ਦੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਫਰਕ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਾ ਹਰ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾ। ਤੇ ਉਹ ਇਨਕੁਇਜ਼ਿਟਿਵ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਨਕਰੇਜ ਕਰੋ।
Yeah.
Hanji, yes.
So in work, you know, we always be curious. You know, always ask the right questions. Let me just touch on the point when they said ki je bacha is a little bit quiet. In the workspace, you're always going to get people who will always ask the questions, but you're always going to get the one person, maybe or 2-3 people who don't want to ask the questions. Part of being inclusive is making sure that we include. So one of the roles that we should be doing is recognising if a person doesn't want to ask questions, you don't put them on the spot and say, Baji, what do you think of this? They may not feel comfortable, but you can take them to one side and still make them inclusive and say, what did you think about this? Because gay bacha, they don't want to speak in public or they don't want to speak in an open forum. So parents should still make the time to try and kind of ask them, you know, what are you thinking about this? Otherwise then you're in a situation where I think you're hampering them, you're not letting them be the best that they can be.
This is what the show is about. Honestly, ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ next question ਪੁੱਛੂ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲ ਆ ਗਈ ਮੇਰੇ ਪਾਸ। You know, I was working for one of the very big retailer in UK ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, there were about 15 shops. ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਬੜਾ ਲਿੰਕ ਕਰਦਾ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ। You know, question ਮੇਰੇ ਮਾਈਂਡ 'ਚ ਆਇਆ। And ਉਹ ਬੌਸ ਆਂਦਾ, ਜਦੋਂ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰਦਾ ਨਾ ਏਰੀਆ ਮੈਨੇਜਰ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਟਾਫ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਮੂਵ ਕਰਕੇ ਨਾ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਰੱਖ ਦਿਓ। Yeah. Manager, what he does, he follows his instructions. ਉਹਨੇ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਦਫਾ ਆਣ ਕੇ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਰੱਖੀ। He had a big go at all the managers. He says, okay, I'm your boss. I'm the top man.
Right.
Yeah. ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਆਣ ਕੇ ਇੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਕਿ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਮੂਵ ਕਰੋ। Don't you think you should ask me why to learn something? ਮੈਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਮੂਵ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ?
ਜੀ।
ਉਹਦੇ ਸੇਲ 'ਚ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਰਕਆਊਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਇੱਥੇ ਪਈ ਹੈ, ਨਹੀਂ ਵਿਕਦੀ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਰੱਖੋ ਤੇ ਵਿਕੇਗੀ। This is not the workout. ਪਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ like a dumb, like a conveyor belt, ਉਹਨੇ ਜੋ ਕਹਿਤਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ।
And I feel that's something that we would want to encourage in all parts of
Somebody
society.
that's
We would want to do that at home, give experiences that enables us to kind of learn from and challenge from. And asking those questions as a child is fundamental. And you're quite right, Paji, if you do have an intelligent child who likes to ask those questions, then we must also cater for that intelligent child who's asking really in those ways for more stimulus, for more educational content. And that happens in the workplace too.
100%.
And this is where diversity comes into
that's
play,
right,
where you may have a colleague who has worked or been brought up in a culture where they have learnt these new ways of perhaps building something.
चलो तो start कर दे. How do you identify perspective, diversity that inclusion?
Perspective is in everybody's realm. Your perspective, as we're sitting here, we have three different perspectives. We have a perspective when we are raised, when we're going through life and experiencing different scenarios, whether be that at the workplace, be that in a social setting, be that anywhere really. We might be standing on the top of a building, all three of us facing down. What you will see, what we will all see.
We all see different things.
A different thing and a different interpretation.
Right. You ask 10 people the same question, you'll probably get 10 different answers.
Yes.
I'm going to go back to the beginning now. We should have done it before. But my brain is how come you both involved in this? It's such a serious and such a educational subject for people to know. And depth which learn karna, मैं 2 घंटे से show कर सकते हैं. We can talk. Still cover
not enough.
It's not enough.
You will scratch the iceberg.
पर मैं पहला तो मनु खुश हूँ कि साडे अपने बंदे इस लेवल ते काम करते ने. You know, मैं पता क्या go back to again ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਈ ਸੀ 100 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਇਆ ਨੂੰ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ. We couldn't find the job. ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮਿਲ ਗਿਆ ਲੈ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ.
You couldn't even rent a room.
Exactly, not a room. Job नहीं सीखे, बड़े low job लेंदे सी. हालांकि तू बेहतर job कर दे आए सीखे. Look where you are today. You trying to tell people तुसी seminar वगैरह रख दे हो, teach कर दे हो. And this time लग गया. देर आए, दुरुस्त आए ना. So I really मैं तुनु respect करदा कि तुसी अपना role model हो चीज़ां दे बीच.
So I think, so for me personally, I'm going to touch on your point now. I think with my parents, you would always class blue collar and white collar workers, and our parents didn't want us to be blue collar workers. They straight away said, "No, you're going to go to college. You know, you're going to go to university." We spoke about this last time, right?
There's no discussion.
There isn't. It wasn't. It was almost like there's a piece of paper. You pick one, and this is what you're going to do. I mean, things have changed since then. But the reason I'm so powerful about the diversity piece is the experiences that Benji, you and I have probably had of the workplace when going to school and some of the discrimination we faced, right? We don't want the next generation to experience what we've experienced. So by having a platform like this, where we can talk about these things, we can educate others, and hopefully there's people out there who can do what we're nothing special. We're just two normal people, right? Yes. Who just have a real passion, and that's what drives me. Give my nephews. Or people who are coming into the workplace, man, I don't want them to experience the same things I had, where I walk through a door and someone says, "Oh, there's another one," or "You don't sound Indian," or "There's a funny smell around here." They shouldn't be hearing that. So it's very easy for us just to sit down and say, "You know what, this isn't for me," or Benji or Baji for yourself to run this show. You could easily sit at home now doing what you want to do, right? But for us, there's a real passion which drives that through. And what success looks like to me, Benji, I don't know what it looks like to you, is when you see people from an underrepresented group. So this isn't just about being Sikh. This is about covers, people from different ethnic backgrounds succeeding or being role models for others, and you've helped pave a little bit of a path for them.
No, but
that's what drives me.
So the passion is jo bhi hai.
Yeah, that's right.
But you have reached a stage. Let me clarify this now, because मैं हमेशा कहता हूँ ना, please मैंने call करो. बड़े लोग तुसी काट रिंग कर दियो कि मैं show ते आना है, because you got nothing to talk about. I'll be very blunt about it. Jay and अपने पास जी, इन्होंने मैं 2-3 दफा क्या मैंने guest भी भेज देने मैंने जब अपनी आ सकते, because they are in a similar kind of group. I had hunted these people, not that they rang me to come into the show. This is the difference. You put yourself in a position.
That's right, yeah.
People look for you. Yeah. Captain knowledge share karo loka de naal.
And Paji, sorry.
No, Benji.
And Paji, that was important. I mean, you gave me a voice when I was explaining to you about bullying. It was a completely unexpected topic. Thank you for that. But that was very important to me, personally, for me to come here and speak about that, because that also then gave me the self-awareness.
Yes.
Diversity is also about self-awareness. that how do we assess where we are in our own biases, in our own awareness of how we function out there in the world.
Okay, what are the practical steps you can take to increase in on all level the upper diversity?
Diversity, you know, if we're working in a workplace, then there would be some procedures, and it would have to come from leadership.
It has to come from
to come from leadership, and the leadership and management, if
lead by example,
can lead by example, are diverse in their nature.
That's right.
You know, and also then have those visions and success kind of goals linked in to the talent that they want to have on their team. That is what diversity would look like.
Yeah. I mean,
but it's having that open mind.
Yeah. And don't be afraid. I mean, I put myself out there in my workplace. You know, when we're doing events, we're doing anything, I make sure I make the time in order to be there, because you have to lead by example. So when you kind of say, how do you promote diversity within the organisation? Okay, you promote diversity in the organisation by being at the forefront, making sure that you are there at the events, even if they're nothing to do with you, right? So let's talk about LGBT, or let's talk about disabilities. Okay, they may say, "Acha, you know what? Maybe I don't want to go to that because there's something around disability or something around mental health." No, we should go there. We should speak about these things, and automatically, when you're there and when you talk to others, and when you're kind of having discussions, when you're going back to your peers and other senior management, you need to bring them on the journey with you. Because we're already going, you're preaching to the converted. Sade dil vich haga ki we want to try and promote diversity. The challenge we have, Baji, is bringing the people who don't really want to come onto the journey. It's how do we convince them to come? And that's the real challenge. And I will go and I will bring them. So the people who work for me, when I'm going to an event, I make sure they come with me, because if I don't go, they're not going to go. So the saying is, what's important to my boss is important to me. So if I'm going there and telling them to come, they will come, because they know I've got a real passion for it. So that's how I actively promote that. And I think the other thing, we spoke about LinkedIn, when we did the show last time, I put it on LinkedIn. Again, I had lots of people kind of coming through saying, well, how can I help? What can I do to do mentoring? So again, I keep talking about the platform which you do here for us. Let's not underestimate how big this is. Sometimes we sit here and think, it's Akaal Channel, this is just to do with Sikhs. This isn't. This is much, much bigger.
It is.
And because it's so big, sorry to go on about this, because it's so big, that's the inclusion and that's the diversity piece. We're breathing it now as we're talking about that. So hopefully out there, the people listening to this show who are going to watch this on YouTube when we share it, that passion can start to come through, and they're thinking, I want a piece of that pie.
Absolutely, and I think that's one thing is putting these strategies in place, but the other thing is to create the opportunities and put resources in place. I mentioned to you I had the privilege of meeting a certain person recently, and the work that they're doing with underrepresented communities of South Asian backgrounds, with a project that is something new, novel, mind-blowing in tech. And this isn't something that has ever been done before, but it's bringing together communities that would never get a voice in any other conventional way.
I'm sorry, Jadoo, I'm putting not a blame, finding a reason why this has all happened, that you've got to work on diversity now. When we came over to England, if we blended in, you didn't have to do this.
No, but we do.
We made ghettos now. जिथे मेरा भरा आया, जिथे मेरा cousin आया, जिथे मेरा ताया चाचा आया, मैं उठे चले गया. To feel comfortable, net shell दे विच, like you enclosed environment हो जाती है. And this is what we're trying to break.
That's right. So this is so this is I'm talking a little bit about demographics, right? So you're going to. A good example of this, Baji, when you walk down the street and I see a Singh, I will nod. You have the Singh nod, right? If he doesn't nod me back, then hold on, haven't you recognised? Because you're feeling safe in your own community. You're right, but we're not in that space now. The world has moved on.
Exactly.
Then we're never going to break the mould. So we need to start making this change, and that change is only going to come if people actually, be blatant, get off, their their chair would be a more word, and start to do something about it. Otherwise, I think.
But like they say, the charity begins at home.
It does.
ਅਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ they're not different to what you and I were when you're younger. They're bold, they're straight, they talk, they discuss things. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਬ੍ਰਾਂਡ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਨਾ. They had not gone through what you and I have gone through when we arrived.
But it's fundamental to educate them on that background. And what we need to do today in today's society, in my view, is build for global citizens. We're no longer just a citizen of this country or that country. We are borderless in some ways. When the pandemic happened, that was the first time, we're talking about diversity, which affects everybody. But if we were to put the word coronavirus in there today, then we know this word now. So why can we not do that with certain topics such as this?
We were lost. We didn't know what it was.
Yes.
One of the yada in the funny way of saying it. ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਕੁੱਤਾ ਵੀ sneeze ਕਰਦਾ ਸੀ ਨਾ we got scared.
ਹਾਂਜੀ. But this is
really ਕਰਨਾ ਪਿਆ, ਕੋਈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ friend ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਅੱਧਾ ਖਾ ਓਏ ਤੂੰ ਚੈੱਕ ਕਰ ਲੈ.
But this is exactly your example here is exactly similar to why we are primitive to that. We were it's encoded in our DNA. Okay, when we first came to be on this planet, we were scared of going to specific things or trying a plant and maybe we'll die, or if a meat can't have let's see if we're going to live or not. And this is what diversity is in a way. It's trying to figure out and say that we don't need to be afraid. We need to test and see and have those diverse challenge those create opportunities, create resources, give a helping hand to somebody.
So how do you create an environment ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਾ employees ਨੂੰ feel safe and empowered, where they can share their unique personal ideas?
Do you want to go first or answer?
You go ahead first.
Right, so Baji, for me, we have employee resource groups, and what employee resource groups are is where underrepresented members of any organisation can come and talk about some of the challenges that they face. But they're only effective if you have people who don't look like you and sound like you being a voice at the table. So in the workplace, I head up, in my last job, for the company I work for, I headed up the employee resource group. Where I am now, I'm a senior sponsor for that employee resource group. I'm a lead for that as well. In the workplace, that's how you create an environment where people, just like the example you gave earlier, you were all kind of together, you all live together. Well, in this place, you will openly have open discussions about some of the challenges you face, and then we can take those to the board. We can try and help shape the strategy in the work. A good example of this, Baji, is what we called rules of the road. So if you was interviewing me like you're doing now, on a one-to-one basis for a job, you said, Charlie Singh, I like him, I'm going to employ him, even though I may not have the right qualifications. If you have 2 or 3 people who don't look like you and don't sound like you, they challenge you and say, actually, you know what, I don't think Kavaljeet's maybe got this or maybe got that. So having a diverse panel when you're interviewing is just as powerful as people who are being interviewed. So everything should be based on meritocracy. The right person for the right job should get that. But the employee resource groups in any organisation, and this is one thing that I would like to talk about quickly, Margie, is if you work for an organisation who don't have an employee resource group, you need to go to your HR, you need to go, if there's a D&I place, and ask them, why haven't we got an employee resource group, right? Because if it's important to an organisation, they're the companies you want to work for. If they're not, be the change and be the lead and set up an employee resource group.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that.
100%. Don't be afraid. You should be able to go up to your board, go up to your senior manager. I did. It didn't exist. And I went up and said, well, why haven't we got an employee resource group? So challenge it. Be the change and be the lead, and that will. You have to be the person to make the change. Sometimes people don't want to do that, and this is why I think it's so important in the workplace to have these kind of networks and don't work in silo. If you have employee resource groups for women in IT, for example, LGBT, disabilities, there's intersectionalities, Baji, which run through all of those. You should be able to work together. The fist is stronger than than one finger. right?
part of inclusion
It is 100%.
and belonging. Yes.
I've never mentioned this on air. लोगों ने कहने ने बड़ा कुछ किया इस करके मैं नहीं mention करता because topic है तो मैं गल कर रहा हूँ like I go to PPL मैंने शौक सीखा but I didn't go for commercial.
Right.
Lot of things are done. बच्चा हुंदा ना बड़ा कुछ करना हुंदा कुछ हुंदा कुछ नहीं हुंदा. I've done a diploma in courses in the interviewing skill the beach.
Right. Okay.
When I did that, I was with a retailer company the नाम जिदा मैं पहला mention किया not knowing कि वो मैंने हुन काम आएगी.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So you get my point.
Yes.
In fact, I was used to sit on the panel for the interviews of the Kardesh, Paji, when an applicant walks to the office,
Yes.
the panel had already made a decision to hire him or not to hire him.
That's
Yes.
right. Yeah.
And it all depends. जितना हुन तुसी अपने अपने present कर रहे हो ना, लोगों को explain करें दी. How much are you able to explain to them? How much they impressed with you? Then it's all up to you because उन्होंने style के लिए रखना है. If he does a big, blunder, something totally wrong, then the panel will have to decide कि no, and जो image बनी थी वो खराब होगी.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
So.
It's
30 seconds and that we're going through the half time.
Have we?
I know.
Gosh, that was really quick.
बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग हैगा देखो बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ 30 ਸੈਕਿੰਡ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਮੈਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦੇ ਜਨਰਲ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ ਵੀ ਬੜੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਕੀਪ ਵਾਚਿੰਗ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਇਸਲਾਮ ਦੀ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਰੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਕਰੋ ਮੇਰੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਫਾਇਦੇਮੰਦ ਲਈ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ honestly to improve ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਲਾਈਫਸਟਾਈਲ to improve confidence in you to make sure ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗੇ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਜਾਣਨਾ ਹੈ Stay tuned in. ਅਸੀਂ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹੁਣੇ ਵਾਪਸ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ
ਅਕਾਲ ਚੈਨਲ ਨੂੰ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ ਨਵੀਂ ਵੀਡੀਓਜ਼ ਦੀ ਨੋਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਬੈਲ ਆਈਕਨ ਨੂੰ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰਨਾ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲਣਾ
ਬਾਅਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਬੜੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਚ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਟਾਈਮ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਹੈ ਬੜੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਲਿਸਟ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਚੈਟ ਸ਼ੋ ਇਟਸ ਨਾਟ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਆਨਸਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਇਟਸ ਵੈਰੀ ਮਚ ਲਾਈਕ ਅ ਚੈਟ ਸ਼ੋ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਘਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਓਨੈਸਟਲੀ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਫਾਇਦੇ ਲਈ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਨਾ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਮੂਵ ਕਰ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਡੂ ਇਟ ਯਾ ਬੌਸ ਦੀ ਰਿਸਪੈਕਟ ਹੈਗੀ ਯਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਡੋਂਟ ਜਸਟ ਬੀ ਕਾਪੀ ਕੈਟ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਨੇ ਕਹਿਤਾ ਕਾਪੀ ਪੇਸਟ ਕਰ ਦੋ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇਟ ਡਜ਼ਨਟ ਵਰਕ ਲਾਈਕ ਦਿਸ ਨਾਓ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਕੇ ਥੱਕ ਗਿਆ ਯੂਜ਼ਡ ਟੂ ਡੂ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਥੋੜੀ ਦੇਰ ਬੰਦ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ Tell me, मैं लोगों हमेशा पूछता ना tell me how many of you ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਖਾਣੀਆਂ ਪੈਣੀਆਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਕਰਦੇ why ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੂੰ ਛੋਟਾ ਡੋਜ਼ ਦੇ what can I do ਮੇਰਾ ਡਾਈਟ ਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਨਾ ਖਾਣੀਆਂ ਪੈਣ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨੇ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਖਾ ਲਈ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਡੋਜ਼ ਇਨਕਰੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੈ ਲਿੱਤਾ we don't question
And that's another
it's
thing.
no question of knowledge it's your confidence
Hanji.
ਤੁਹਾਡੀ body ਹੈ ਯਾਰ
Hanji. And you can see that as your own self-awareness in this particular topic of diversity, inclusion, equality, all of these topics.
All of that.
I'm one who will go and challenge and ask, I've got a bruised knee. In fact, I did. I had a bruised knee. I went to A&E. There was a long queue. I went again to the GP. What's going on with my X-ray? Kitti kuch nahi hoya. And I was still convinced I can't walk. What's going on? I kept on questioning that. This is my body. I know it more than anyone else in this world. So I went for an MRI scan, and there was a huge injury on the femur bone, which is, causing a huge disability for me. So again, unless we challenge and come in with a different perspective or a different viewpoint, or use some of our own knowledge and understanding, and educate ourselves. Become strongly self-aware. That's going to help with confidence.
You learn every
That's
day.
when you're going to learn.
And confidence.
You have to go through. You were saying, Paji, about being on the interview panel, and that the mind has already been made up. I remember sitting outside, maybe 27 of us, and I was the only woman going for this job in IT, and God was on my side that day that I got this particular job. In fact, I was slightly headhunted for it, but again, I still had 99% male to one female here applying for this job. I didn't know I was going to get it, but there are lots of studies that are being done behind resumes, for example.
Not having your name on there,
not having your name on there, or a certain name would automatically kind of come under some kind of prejudice or bias, and we do these subconsciously without sometimes even realizing we're doing this.
Yeah.
We may not be aware in our own selves that we are, maybe, for example, go back to bullying for 1 second. We may not be aware that we have bullying behaviors or tendencies.
People don't. Yes, you're right.
Unless
you're right.
we are more conscious and
Passive
aware, and
Yeah.
we educate ourselves and we learn and listen to our friends. Listening is a huge skill, okay? You will learn so much more. I mean, I had an experience where I hadn't realized I was unwell. I wasn't making the best decisions, and that was hindered by that particular illness. And when I became more aware of it, I was able to focus on fixing the body, fixing, repairing, getting educated, working through that. And if you want to take an organization through that journey,
It is a
it's
journey.
about storytelling, bringing
Yep.
in all of the education, bringing the learning, putting experiences out there.
It's-
And also that trial and error, and mistakes do happen.
Learn from them.
So you must
Naturally,
learn from these
yeah.
mistakes. One thing I do want to encourage the community to do is mistakes do happen.
Yeah.
Be forgiving, because
Yeah.
if you then cut somebody off at this opportunity, you may just limit them there. At that, you might cut them off at that opportunity. I know I've worked in the teaching field, and some of my colleagues who are Indians, Asians, South Asians, and they weren't sure if they would go into leadership roles. And I'm so proud to say today that they are, and they did within a few
You know,
years.
next ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਸੀਂ
But
ਸਵਾਲ
that's about making mistakes and saying go for it.
ਬਾਈ ਦ ਵੇ ਯੂ نو ਅਸੀਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸਮਝਾਇਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਿ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਪਰ ਲੋਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਡਾਈਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਗਰੁੱਪ 'ਚ ਨੇ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਗਰੁੱਪ 'ਚ ਬੈਠੋ
ਜੀ
ਯੂ ਨੀਡ ਟੂ ਲਰਨ देयर
ਜੀ।
ਵੇ ਆਫ ਸਟਾਈਲ देयर ਵੇ ਆਫ ਲਿਵਿੰਗ देयर ਵੇ ਆਫ ਕਲਚਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੈਗੇ ਨਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਬਾਈਬਲ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੁਰਾਨ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਹੋ ਗੀਤਾ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਥੋੜਾ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਨੂੰ ਧੋਖਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਯੂ ਬਲੀਵ ਐਂਡ ਰਿਸਪੈਕਟ ਯੂਰ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ
Yes.
ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਈਡ ਤੇ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ
ਜੀ।
ਬਟ ਯੂ ਨੀਡ ਟੂ ਨੋ ਅਬਾਊਟ ਅਦਰ ਰਿਲੀਜੀਅਸ
Yeah.
ਕੱਲ ਕਿਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਵੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਕਰ ਸਕੋ ਦਿਸ ਇਜ਼ ਵਾਟ ਦ
100%
ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਇਜ਼
ਜੀ,
ਡਾਈਵਰਸਿਟੀ
100%
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਮਿਲੋ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੋ
ਜੀ
ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਦੇਖੀ ਦੁਬਈ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਾਸ ਦੋਸਤ ਹੈਗੇ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਸੁੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਕੰਡਾਰੀ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਮੇਰਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਨੇ ਦੁਬਈ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਹੀ ਇਜ਼ ਦੀ ਓਨਰ ਆਫ ਦ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ
ਅੱਛਾ ਓਕੇ ਜੀ
ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦਰਬਾਰ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਦੁਬਈ ਦੇ
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਇੰਟਰਫੇਥ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ
Yes.
ਇਨਕਰੇਜ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨਾ
ਜੀ, 100%
ਇਜ਼ ਦ ਚੇਅਰਮੈਨ ਆਫ ਦ ਇੰਟਰਫੇਥ ਸੋਸਾਇਟੀ ਇਨ ਯੂਏਈ ਦੇ
Yeah.
ਵਿੱਚ
Amazing.
and
ਦਿਸ ਇਜ਼ ਵਾਟ
Yeah.
ਡਾਈਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਇਜ਼
And
Yes.
this is, Baji, the point you made earlier was ideal. You're not doing any injustice
Huh.
by learning about others. What you're doing is this is all down to education,
It is,
right?
yes.
It's all down to education, and it's making the time and the effort. But the other thing you need to recognise is your unconscious biases. So everyone has unconscious biases,
we
right?
do.
And a good example of that is Jodho mein chota si, when I used to see skinheads. You know, I used to get a lot of anxiety, and I had their tattoos and their Dr. Martens and whatnot. You think they're all racist. If I fast forward on to how I am now, one of my best mates is covered with sleeves and stuff like that, and you need to recognise these unconscious biases, because when you're interviewing, and the example you gave earlier, you need to park those unconscious biases at the door. All right. So this is why you need a diverse panel when you're going for a job.
Yes.
So every time we interview for work, I will sit on the panel where I can, if it's part of the team or part of another team, just purely so we keep each other true. So if I'm coming with a challenge and he walks through the door and I look at him and think, actually, I'm not going to give you the job because you've got tattoos on, but they might be the right person for the job, but you may say, Baji, he's the right person for the
ਅਸੀਂ
job.
ਲੁਕਸ ਤੇ ਡਿਸੀਜਨ ਬਣਾ
Gee,
ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਨਾ
that's right, yeah, and
yes,
we shouldn't.
We shouldn't.
So Harvard University, if you Google it, they do a really good 10-minute unconscious biases. You answer a couple of
Yes.
questions. I don't know if you've done it, Benji,
Yes.
Baji, it's brilliant. And it kind of tells you, and there's nothing wrong with having unconscious biases. Baji, you have them, Benji,
We
you
all
have them,
we
I
all
have
have them.
But it's about recognising them. So once you recognise them and you recognise what the trigger point is, you can then put steps in to try and say, okay, I need to maybe take a step back.
The other quality I
Gee.
learned the body language as well.
Oh, that's right. Yes, there's
Yes.
a very good book called What Everybody's Saying.
Yes.
This is-
It's about body language.
Yes.
This is part of the interview skill.
Yes,
Yes.
right,
The
yeah.
body language goes side by side.
I would
Gee.
like to say a point on interviewing. This is from an experience in education when we had a panel
Gee.
and bringing on diversity. It was quite a diverse panel. It was difficult to then bring on, your view of, oh well, this person was presenting very well, they spoke very well. And I said, well, why don't we ask the same questions to every candidate?
Oh, you should.
And that is such a fundamental, important thing to do. And I like that you said, yes, we should,
100%.
and we must, because there were some organisations I've worked at where they were not asking the same questions. So therefore, how are you able to,
apple and pears.
How are you able to recruit that talent, those people that you need to do the
I'm
job?
trying to rush through some questions. The question I have an answer, but I want to see how you're going to answer that. How can we ensure that everyone, the voice is heard and valued at the meetings and discussions?
Yeah.
I got some different answer, but मैं थोड़ा professional answer लेना चाहता हूँ. How can you ensure that? How can you?
I think there's, again, I'll go back to self-awareness, respect and responsibility. I think I would say that those are my three things. If you're self-aware, you are aware of how you would bring on others, you respect and value different opinions, differences in discussion points. I mean, we all have heated arguments sometimes, and that's fine. That gives us an opportunity to learn. And then from there on, you can build upon things such as the employee resource groups. You can look at what needs to be put in terms of
I think
support.
Be self-aware, but be aware of others as well.
Yes.
And the reason I say that, in the workspace, we're not all sitting in the same room.
No.
We work for international companies now. You've got people in India, people Australia, people. If they're on the phone, make sure you include them. So I always make a point of stopping the call, if we're in the room and going back to the phones and saying, what do you think about this? Or, is there any thoughts? Because you need to include them in. Otherwise, all they're doing is sitting on the phone for an hour, twiddling their thumbs. They're not going to feel included. So be aware of yourself, but be aware of yourself. Read the room.
Yes. And I think that's where the responsibility comes in.
One word we use, how can you ensure their voice is heard and it's valued at the meeting and the discussion? मेरे हिसाब नाल वो बंदा की deliver करदा ना, how he delivers it to other people and how they, ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੋਜ਼ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਸਟੇਜ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਕੋਈ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, now they go to engage the audience with them. ਉਹ ਕੱਲਾ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਵੇ ਉਹ audience ਕਿਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਣ, that's not a success. So when you're sitting doing something, I can't ensure that it's you going to do it. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ talk ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, how you going to get, ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ show ਕਰਦੇ ਪਏ, I don't know how many people are really hooked onto the TV and listening to me. I don't know. Put your hands up. Let's see.
Let's show hands.
So कई लोग कहते भाई, some बंदे ना, they go deep into it and want to really listen to it कि ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ. It might sound complicated ਜਿਹਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ, ਕੁਝ funny ਜਿਹਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ, because there's certain words ਅਸੀਂ English ਵਿੱਚ use ਕਰੀ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ. Diversity ਮੈਂ ਬੜੀ ਅੱਛੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ explain ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ. ਅਗਰ ਸਮਝ ਜਾਓਗੇ ਲਾਈਫ 'ਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੰਮ ਆਏਗੀ.
And so I think the other thing is active listening. So so if someone said something to me, repeat it to kind of say, okay, Baji, my understanding is A, B, because that shows you've actually listened to what they've said.
Absolutely.
And also participation. This is to your point. Like if you're on the stage and they're not listening or giving space for others to have their opinion, you're going to disengage them. So you need to be able to read the room. You need to give the time and space for others to speak. And you also need to make sure that you listen to. There's no point saying hanji, 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 or twiddling with your phone when someone's talking to you, or rolling your eyes or doing something. Listen to them and take on board what they're saying.
And that's my point on responsibility and respect.
That's right.
Is having that eye contact, the body language.
That's right.
And it also conducive environment. I mean, sometimes we have workplaces where we choose, the wrong environment to be in, the wrong office, or there's a barrier, a huge table in front.
There's a message come through कि बहुत अच्छा subject है, it's difficult, but I'm hooking on to your talk.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you very much.
I hope they put their hand up when they
पता है बड़ा अच्छा लगता है.
There's some active listening happening right now.
मैं ना आज ही ना show देख रहा सी Judge Judy दा, बड़े पुराने रिकॉर्ड होते थे. So very short, मैं लम्बा example दे रहे हैं. They were like boyfriend girlfriend सी, black people from America. ते उन्हें अपनी girlfriend दा car damage की थी. So ਜਦੋਂ judge ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਦਿਆ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਤੂੰ ऐदा किता कि you were wrong to do this, the other brother was sitting in there among the other people. And when she made that statement, the brother smiled. ਉਹ ਨਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਬ੍ਰਦਰ ਨੂੰ ਪੈ ਗਈ, ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਯੂ نو ਤੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਐਦਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੀ ਹਾਂ, ਤੂੰ ਸਮਾਈਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਪਿਆ, ਯੂ ਕਾਈਂਡ ਆਫ ਗਿਵਿੰਗ ਸਿਗਨਲਸ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਤੂੰ ਕੀਤਾ ਵਾਸ ਵੈਰੀ ਫਨੀ, ਆਈ ਕੈਨ ਮੇਕ ਮਾਈ ਡਿਸੀਜਨ ਔਨ ਯੂਰ ਸਮਾਈਲ।
That's right.
ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਨਾ, ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਨਾ,
be aware of your surroundings.
ਅਦਰਵਾਇਜ਼ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਾਇਸ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਇੱਕ ਬੰਦੇ ਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ।
That's right.
I have to say that's a very good example of in adult
I
life.
know that.
Anji. But when you come to children, sometimes we see in the classroom a child who's got a smirk on his face, you know, or her face. And I've personally made that mistake as well, to say, what are you laughing at? What's so funny? And it was just a moment. They were actually thinking of the topic and they thought of a funny example. But sometimes we need to ask them why. Yeah. What was funny in this conversation? And I think that's also a respectful point, is to include them in what was amusing, but also to call out when you know it's a disrespect.
Yeah.
Absolutely call the, you
How
know.
can you you know, the leaders promote diversity with illusion within their terms and the company de vich, department de vich?
We touched a little bit about this, and I think one of the things, a strong vision, a vision for success is only going to happen when you have the right strategies and policies, procedures in place, and some of that involves some of the legal implications, which HR and a legal professional would put into play. We do have things such as the Equality Act, for example, which would help us to make judgments on what do we need to, as leaders, do to diversify or adapt or make flexible for our workforce. Perhaps we have somebody with disabilities. What are we doing enough, or are we doing anything in the first place for that particular workforce? Or maybe we forward planned for potential disabilities or accidents, etc., workplace accidents.
You know, question तो पूरे पूरे नहीं हो रहे, लेकिन मैं आपको थोड़ा change कर रहे हैं। I think पहला मैं थोड़े को पूछूंगा कि तुसी अपना ना, let's spend some time, you give me advice, because ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ important ਹੈਗਾ कि people need, ਮੇਰੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਨਾ, before I ask you for advice, always engage with intelligent conversation ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਕਾਰ ਸਿੱਖਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਡਰਾਈਵ ਕਰਦੇ ਸਿੱਖਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਚੀਜ਼ ਮਾਸਟਰ ਬਣਨਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਰਟਿਸਟ ਬਣਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਕਰੋਗੇ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਰਫੈਕਟ ਬਣੋਗੇ। ਸੇਮ ਥਿੰਗ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬ੍ਰੇਨ ਹੈਗਾ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਰਪ ਰੱਖੋ, ਪੋਜ਼ਿਟਿਵ ਸੋਚੋ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਰਪ ਰੱਖੋ, ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਟ। ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਾ ਵੇਸਟ ਆਫ ਟਾਈਮ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਛ ਆਰਗੂਮੈਂਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਕੋਈ ਈਗੋ ਦੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਹੈਗਾ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਫਰੈਂਡਸ਼ਿਪ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸੈਲਫਿਸ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਡਿਲੀਟ ਕਰੋ ਆਪਣੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਟੋਟਲੀ। ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਤੇ ਬਟਨ ਬੜਾ ਸਿੰਪਲ ਹੈਗਾ, ਡਿਲੀਟ ਅਰੇਂਜ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਓਨੈਸਟਲੀ, ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ ਯੂ ਨੋ ਦੇਰ ਇਜ਼ ਨੋ ਟਾਈਮ ਕਿ ਲੋਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਲਈ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਨਾ, ਅਗਰ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੁਝ ਖਰਾਬ ਕੀਤਾ ਨਾ, ਆਈ ਨੀਡ ਟੂ ਫੋਰਗਿਵ ਯੂ, ਆਈ ਗੋਟ ਟੂ ਮੂਵ ਔਨ। ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸੋਚੀ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਯਾਰ ਇਹਨੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀਤਾ, ਮੈਂ ਬਦਲਾ ਲੈਣਾ, ਬਈ ਡੂ ਯੂ ਸਟਾਪ।
And this is it, ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼, this ਬਦਲਾ ਚੀਜ਼ and this ego, ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅੰਦਰ ਖਾ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ, it's a killer. It is. So forgiveness is the main thing. Forgive and you know and move on. The ego piece is very interesting. I think we would be lying here if we all sat and said we've never had ego. I think we have all had it, and we have to control it. It happened. I was driving
before you say that,
Hanji,
you have it, but we don't recognize that we have.
Yes,
we all have it.
But this is the self-awareness again. Is how much of this ego is popping out? Where is it expressing itself?
Yes, and it's that trigger point.
And sometimes it's unwittingly, it's happening without you even subconsciously.
Achha, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਾ ਆਪਣੀ advice ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾ, what people need to do, what should they focus on, what changes they should bring in their life, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਇਹਨੂੰ raise ਕਰੋ, look at the camera, like to take your time and say, then you do it yourself.
I think if you have an opportunity to learn something new, to become part of a group that is not representative of what you are comfortable with, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, learn from other people, travel if you can. Travel gives you a great experience of different cultures, different backgrounds. Learn something like a language skill, for example. Learn something that is out of your comfort zone. That's going to enable you to kind of build that self-awareness as well. And self-awareness, just see on ego di gal kiti hai, we need to learn how confident we are with certain things. And once we become quite confident in some, say for example a sport, try a different sport. Don't stick with the same thing. Try and broaden your horizons. This is a vast universe. I think I've said it before. Take inspiration from people that you can follow. get into professional networks.
Yeah.
That's fundamental if you want to build on your workforce or your work plans, career plans, whether you're looking to be a startup or get a good business mentor. And, you know, Baji mentioned about deleting and blocking negativity. Well, you know, that's where you would balance offside that with following positivity, positive people who have influences in a positive and conducive way to the lifestyle that you want to have. And I really believe in paying things forward. So kindness is a key thing for me. I don't believe in just the niceties of things. I believe in fundamental kindness. If you have the means to offer somebody an opportunity, please do that. Let them try once. And if you know, if the mistake happens, it happens. Let them learn from that mistake and move on. There's always learning in mistakes.
Now, before you start, I would like you to start on तुसी क्या सीखा कोई चीज़ है क्या तुसी happy नहीं है जो नहीं है you lead the show. You come in, you do make the change.
Yes.
Instead of sitting and complaining.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know.
There's no point. So for me, I think if you're going to sit and moan and complain, my life is like this, you are in control of your own destiny. Okay, so if you're in control of your own destiny, you need to grab the bull by the horns and you need to make that change. Benji covered a lot of stuff here, so I will quickly just talk about I get really hung up on the professional stuff. So we're on LinkedIn, okay, so you know, feel free to reach out to me, to reach out to Benji, seek opportunities out in your organisation, and just because the opportunities are not there, make the opportunities, all right? Don't be shy, you know, have the confidence to kind of go up and make the change. Your sangat is also very important as well, Baji. The sangat you keep, the people you surround yourself with is who you are. And the last thing I would kind of like to say is be confident. And if you're not confident, seek a mentor or seek someone out who will kind of help bring that to the forefront. So I know we don't have a lot of time, I'm quite conscious about that. But they're the things I want to talk about.
Kind of finish this up off, जितना दोनों ने अपनी advice देती है. You know, कितना भी बंदा strong किसी तरीके नाल भी होवे ना, camera is such a thing, it makes everybody nervous. It's with experience, or either you have it or you don't have it. I mean, I don't know, guys, you can see confidence है कि जब they're sitting talking, उन्हें पता भी नहीं है कि you've been watched over 157 countries. You don't even know you've been watched by 2 million people around the world. You know, it's scary to know that because out of 2 million, 1,900,000 something are saying गलत कर रहे हैं, गलत कर रहे हैं.
But that's diversity of thought.
Perspectives.
That's diversity of thought, and we respect that. We don't even think the camera's here now.
No.
But this is what I mean now.
Yes.
You देखो गल्लां च इतना involve हो गए किधर गल्लां च involve होए ताकि थोड़े लिए बेहतरी हो गई. You bring, you know, मैं बड़े लोगों नाल मैं बड़ी दफा repeat करदा है बंदे retire 5 मिनट रह गए सिर्फ ਜਿਹੜਾ best time ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਲਾਈਫ ਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਨਾ ਬਚਪਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਿਰ ਤੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਨਾ ਯੂ ਡੋਨਟ ਨੋ ਗੈਸ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਕੌਣ ਦੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਰੋਟੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਕੌਣ ਦੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜੋ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦਿਆ ਯੂ ਡੋਨਟ ਨੋ ਕਿ ਫਾਦਰ ਕੋਲ ਪੈਸੇ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਆਣੇ ਨੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੰਗ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈ ਨੋ ਅਨਨੋਇੰਗਲੀ ਯਾ ਬਾਕੀ ਦੇ ਲਾਈਫ ਤੇ ਸਟਰਗਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਸਾਰੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਮੇਕ ਦ ਬੈਸਟ ਆਫ ਇਟ मैं लोगों ने पूछा पाजी किदा की हाल है कहते टाइम पास कर दे और मैं कहा जे तू 10 साल होर जिएगा तू टाइम पास ही करेगा डू समथिंग कोई भला करो कोई चैरिटी करो कोई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ज्वाइन करो help others
yeah because you know helping others I'm sure that the Bhamra, you know, who've done seva nishkam seva help someone that khushi you get in your dil doesn't matter how much money you have in the world that's never going to give you that kind of khushi that you got the best things in life are free and doing other people's mapyodi seva and other people's seva that is probably the best piece of advice we can probably give.
Absolutely ek mere ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪਤਾ ਕੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਚ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਬੜਾ ਅੱਛਾ ਐਕਸੈਪਟਡ ਰਾਤ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਦਿਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਨ ਵਾਲੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਾ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਟਾਪ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਨਾ 5 ਮਿੰਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਸਪੈਂਡ ਕਰੋ ਉਹਦਾ ਹਾਲ ਚਾਲ ਪੁੱਛੋ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਦੌੜਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਮੈਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਹੈ ਰਸ਼ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਬਲੱਡ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਰ ਲਈ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਤੇਰਾ ਬਲੱਡ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹਾਈ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਦ ਵੇ ਹੀ ਬੀਨ ਰਨਿੰਗ ਅਰਾਊਂਡ ਉੱਥੇ ਬਲੱਡ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਰ ਸਿਰ ਨੂੰ ਚੜ ਗਿਆ ਸਾਰਾ ਯੂ ਨੋ ਫਾਈਂਡ ਟਾਈਮ ਫॉर ਈਚ ਅਦਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਰਿੰਗ ਕਰੋ ਉਹਦਾ ਹਾਲ ਪੁੱਛੋ ਯਾਰ ਮੈਂ ਤੇਰੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋਚ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਯੂ ਨੋ ਹਾਊ ਸੈਟੀਸਫਾਈਂਗ ਦੈਟ ਇਜ਼
we are lacking this lack for
humanity
kind communication and humanity and this is what it all comes down to diversity is
manu aayi der aayi par durust aayi
but having this platform
Anji.
And having something like this, Baji, so thank you again for
Yes,
this,
thank you
gives
very
us the opportunity to spread, I was going to say spread the love, but you know, I suppose it is, right?
Kindness
Spread the
and
kindness, the love and
absolutely,
humanity. And without
yes.
this, we can't reach these 2 million
देखो एक
people.
चीज़ है मैं फिर कहना ਜਦੋਂ ਨਾ मैं ਹੁਣੇ क्या कहते हैं इंटेलिजेंट टॉक करोगे ना थोड़े इंटेलिजेंट दिमाग ਚੱਲੇਗਾ ऑनेस्टली शार्प ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਯੂ نو ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਨਾ ਕੁਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ
नहीं,
No.
ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਪਰੈਡ ਕਰ ਜੋ
Anji.
that's right.
give
yeah.
that knowledge to people it's more than giving somebody पैसा छड़ गया
No,
उन्होंने
that's
ये
right,
दे गया
yeah.
वो दे गया
Knowledge.
कार दे दी थी you
जी,
know
हाँ
the
जी.
materialized things
Doesn't
doesn't give
matter.
you satisfaction
No,
No.
no.
Knowledge.
People remember you by your thoughts and your actions, not what car you've been driving or how big your house is, Baji. So spot on.
And I think this is one thing that we're all connected, and
Ji.
it's part of the oneness of the universe of humanity. Is if once you can create a chain reaction in
Ji.
in diversity, for example,
Yeah.
पर सारे से
you
फिर
can
ego आ
really
जाती
set
है
fire to,
Yeah. But we
to
can
great
control.
things.
We can control.
You can.
We can control.
Yes.
मैं
our
एक
ego.
वो लेडी ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ
ਜੀ।
ਮੇਰੀ ਨਾ ਮਾਮੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਿੰਡ ਤੋਂ ਸੀਗੀ
जी.
ਯੂ نو ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗੁੱਸਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਾ ਇਟਸ ਬੈਗ ਹੈ 에ਅਰ ਦਾ ਇਟਸ ਆਲ ਇਨ ਦਾ 에ਅਰ
Anji.
ਉਹ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹ 'ਚ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਬਰੀਥ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਗੁੱਸਾ ਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ
जी,
ਹੈ।
that's right.
ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਣ ਦੇਣਾ
That's right.
tell the gussa you're not going to take over my body
No, it's not good for
tell
you.
the gussa
Anji.
and it's not way of saying it it's a fact that's what it
It's
is
a mindset.
mindset
It's a
And
mindset.
there's a research that emotions last about 90 seconds. See, we can hold on to that for nearly 9 years. You know, why do we do
That's
that?
right, yeah. I'm not
Well,
talking
And
to
it
them.
just ruins your own body
as
and
lady ne
thinking.
manu maybe over 30 years they manu
Yeah.
lovers kay sige
But yaad hai
Aaj hi
tanu,
yaad
we
hai
still remember. And these are the things with our parents. You know, when we're young, oh, mum, dad ki kende, yeah, mum, ma, no, that. Chitte wala ge hun. Then you remember, ki aaj mum, dad ne gal kaisi, say kaisi. And these are the things, what our Buzurg people have said to us, there's a reason they've said it, and it's from experience. I think our young age, and it's all part of growing up, we don't really. But now I sit back and I listen to what my mum says and my dad says, because it makes sense to me now. And to your point earlier, Bajitu Sikh, our mum and dad, they're like our chatri. They're an umbrella for us.
umbrella pakki gal
But when that umbrella's gone, then you realise it. But it's too late. Then you need to
Just
live
Although-
for the
although
moment.
when you have it you don't appreciate
Yes,
it.
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much मैं
Thanks,
माफी
Baji,
चाहूंगा
thank
time
you.
इजाजत
जी,
नहीं दे रहा
हाँ जी.
when you're having fun time goes quick but it wasn't now it wasn't honestly बड़ी दूरों आए ने अपना knowledge share करते ने हमेशा कोशिश होती है कि जो सब्जेक्ट करना उन्हें पकड़ने की कोशिश करो ध्यान ना सुनो प्यार ना सुनो अगर तुसी इन्वॉल्व हो जाते ना कन्वर्सेशन ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਮਝੋਗੇ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਮਝਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਨਵੋਲਵ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੋ ਸਟੇ tuned in to the channel and tuned into the conversation ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਵੈਲਿਊ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ they done their best and ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਪਾਸਿਓਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਫਾਇਦੇ ਲਈ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਰੇ I bring my guests ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਸੁਸਾਇਟੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਕਰੇ ਭਾਜੀ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਤੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਵੀਕ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤਬ ਤੱਕ ਰੱਬ ਰੱਖਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਫਤਿਹ ਬੁਲਾਈਏ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ